To be showing you a clip from this series. Now I apologize for the blurriness and the fuzziness. I think it's because this was an attempt to colorize these films and my players are not adequate enough to play them properly. So it's not really my camera, it's the actual DVD. Now there's going to be a little bit of a focus here on the West Coast, and I'm not going to feature this video, but I should do a video on it sometime, and that is the movie 1941. It's related.
But it is in fact the West Coast, where the idea of a Japanese attack seems more plausible, that is overtaken by hysteria. Suddenly, 120,000 Japanese Americans become suspect. First, their radios are confiscated.
Now notice it's the Japanese Americans that are suspect. Nothing at all about German Americans. Have probably round up about 50% of the American population. But Japanese Americans are easy to identify by their oriental features. Now this is an example of the government fulfilling the plan of the devil. Kill, steal, and destroy. Mostly in this segment, known as the Japanese internment, is the stealing of their possessions. And not only that, the destroying of their lives.
And the sheriffs take their fingerprints. The government posts orders that introduce emergency measures. Roosevelt declares, "I admit that it violates the Constitution, but it is a military necessity."
Okay, now, what do you call that? That is called a dictator. An order comes from a dictator to imprison the Japanese population on the West Coast. I admit that it violates the Constitution, but it's a military necessity. By the way, I'm sorry that the bottom English lines are not clear. Again, it's just the way this film is set up and the way my DVD player is not able to show it adequately. Now, you have to understand something. Most people think that we fought fascism in Europe, we, the United States. And not one individual ever stopped to think that there was fascism in the United States. And FDR is the greatest representative of a fascist government. All right? So FDR does exactly what Mussolini had been doing in Italy and what Hitler had been doing in Germany. Issuing orders over citizens. And incidentally, the Japanese Americans here are citizens, many of them. Trustworthy citizens. Actually, there's a second generation of citizenship. There's the Nisei and the Isai. Second generation of citizenship of Japanese. And yet, because of their oriental features, they are accused of being criminals and taken off to camps. So there were death camps supposedly in Europe, and nobody thinks about the camps that we created for the Japanese American who were loyal citizens of the United States. and their possessions are stolen out from underneath them.
And yet, these Americans of Japanese ancestry have lived for generations in California, where they contribute to the agriculture and economy of the state. Most of them are U.S. citizens.
Maybe that's exactly why they are taken out, so that there will be jobs for others, and their possessions will be distributed like the booty of war. Later on, the American government is going to try to make up for this. Comes under the first President Bush, to give reparations back to the Japanese Americans. It was too late. It was brutal, cruel, inhumane.
They are given 48 hours to sell their shops and their houses. They are then evacuated in groups to relocation centers far out in the deserts of Utah or up in the snows of Oregon. Centers euphemistically called internment camps, but which are reminiscent of another kind of camp. A disgraceful spectacle for the United States.
Well, at least the makers of this special on the war is in agreement that this is an embarrassing, terrible thing that was done in the United States of America, and particularly to the Japanese Americans on the West Coast.
In the words of the American novelist Julie Otsuka, my upbringing was very American. We never spoke Japanese at home. We didn't eat Japanese food. And then, my grandfather was arrested by the FBI as a suspected spy for Japan, along with my grandmother, my uncle, and my mother.
Okay, once again, suspending all the privileges of being a citizen and just being arrested because you're a Japanese American. Now, don't think it's non-existent today, because the Patriot Act can do that to anyone for no reason whatsoever. Just arrest them and take them away.
My family has always been very discreet about what happened. But nothing diminishes their loyalty to America. 6,000 will serve as translators in the Pacific. Nearly 20,000 will sign up to combat the Germans in Europe.
You know, notice they put them in combat in Europe, all right, because they want them in the War of Pacific. That wouldn't look too good. And supposedly the Japanese Americans who fought in the European conflict, they were the most decorated of all. Now, I don't know how far you want to take this as to reality, R-E-A-L-I-T-Y, or R-E-E-L, real-ity, real R-E-E-L. But anyhow, that's the report, that many of them were highly decorated for their service to the United States. What a disgrace.
The rest will be freed at the end of the war. In 1942, America...
Freed at the end of the war, but not compensated. Like I say, that whole idea of compensation doesn't come until President Bush, Bush Sr. And then again it's passed, and by now all these people are dead and gone. What a disgrace. Well, anyhow, Japanese Americans were not treated with honor and dignity in the period we call the Second World War. May God have mercy upon our land for the sins of our people. Thank you for watching this video. End of video.